Alright, so this one I want to talk about the balance of payments and the exchange rate because they're kind of one and the same, right? So there'll be two videos. This one is what happens if your country, United States, has a balance of payments deficit. What's going to happen in the exchange markets, or what are the possibilities, right? And so a couple things to remember. What does a U.S. balance of payments deficit means? Three ways of saying the exact same thing, right, is that the credits are smaller than the debits, right? The money entering the United States, right, is not as much as the money leaving the United States. I'll do the arrows over there in a second. Or the supply of a foreign exchange is not as much as the demand of a foreign exchange. And so generally, the more money is leaving, going out away from the U.S. So here I've got, let's do the ruble market again. I've got the United States, and that's supposed to be Russia. And we're illustrating a U.S. balance of payments deficit, right? More debits than credits. If that's our story, right, here's the U.S. and here's Russia. Let's look at the ruble market. Here is United States demand for rubles, right? We studied this before. This is ruble demand, right? Whenever you buy stuff from Russia, you got to pay for it, or invest in Russia, or go to Russia, or whatever, you got to buy it. So there's ruble demand, right? So my screen is getting a little wobbly here, sorry. And from the U.S. point of view, that's a minus, right? That's money leaving. And in the deficit situation, this is the bigger one, right? On the other hand, there is money returning, right? Money coming into the United States, that's the credit, right? So this is the debits are the negative ones, and the positive ones are the credits. But here I'm illustrating the example. What if the credits are bigger? This arrow is bigger, right? So you see, for whatever reason, perhaps we're buying tons of Russian timber, or Russian aluminum, or who knows, right? More money is leaving that way. Now we got a couple ways to look at that. One is these arrows and whatnot. But actually, remember, now you're comfortable with supply and demand. Ruble demand is now bigger than ruble supply. I'll write that up on here. More people are selling their rubles than people who want to buy their rubles. And so if we put that into our graph, just typical supply and demand graph, here we got number or quantity of rubles. Here's we got the price of rubles, right, in dollars per ruble, right? That's our pricing scheme. There's people buying, they're selling. The demand is downward sloping like this. That's the demand for the rubles. And the supply, right, is upward sloping. Goes something like this. Supply, I'll put R for rubles, something like this. And remember, we're trying to illustrate a situation where the demand for rubles is somehow bigger than the supply, right? This is out of equilibrium, right? Because the price is not right here, right? So we're essentially, demand is bigger. Where does that happen? It's perhaps when the ruble is below the equilibrium level, right? So we'll say, E0, right? E0, low, maybe just for comparison's sake, before 1 penny, something like that. It's real cheap. And can you see at this price level, really cheap ruble, that graphically, sure enough, people love cheap things, so demand is way out here, whereas supply is way back here to the left. So demand is greater than supply, and that's the exact same thing, right, as saying, U.S. debits are greater than credits. So this graph here is the same as this graph, right? Now, two things can happen, and then we'll be done with this little video, is if the central banks don't do anything, right, let the market decide, what's going to happen? What happens when there's tons of demand for anything? Somebody's going to say, hey, I want a ruble, but I can't find one. What if I pay more? Hey, I'll pay you double. I'll pay you $1. I'll pay you 2 cents for it. The price is going to go up. So two possibilities, right? Two possibilities, or choices or whatnot. Two possibilities is if the central bank does nothing, the ruble will appreciate. It'll go up to where the market wants it to be, so where supply equals demand. One possibility, or possibility one, is the ruble, right, will find its market equilibrium, right? So ruble will appreciate to where the market wants it to be, right? But sometimes, right, we just studied the previous set, maybe the central bank doesn't want it to be. They're like, hey, we like a really cheap currency. We want to keep it at 1 cent. So they got to do something, and you now know from the before is what do you do if you want to keep a currency really cheap, right? Is you sell it, right? If demand is really big out here, right, and there's not enough supply, is the central bank of Russia can say, hey, nobody wants to sell those rubles, we'll sell them, we can print them if we have to. So the central bank will sell lots of rubles. And of course, what does that mean in a two-country scenario? It means they got to buy a lot of dollars. Sell rubles means buy dollars, right? And that, right, would keep the currency down here. If you had to draw it as as a graph, right, is supply would move over here, make it here, and then try to intersect it like that. We'd have to really sell lots of rubles, right? And that would keep the market equilibrium here, right? So that's what we got to do, right? Yeah. I got my dog, I got my Luca, I got my wife here. We're all so excited about the Russian exchange rate.
Look, show them your dog.
Gotta hurry up though, they're trying to do their homework. That's Annie. She's also excited about the Russian ruble. She smells chicken or something. Alright, so that you got, I'm going to do the opposite for a separate video, right? But that's what happens if you've got balance of payments deficit. Money's leaving. And when we get to currency crisis, we'll talk about, different reasons why this happens. But let's do the opposite. What happens if there's a U.S. balance of payments surplus? It'd be the exact mirror image of this.